Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I was having a conversation with a client today about two cities, both of which I think are fantastic and are places that many people who are thinking about where they should go and live in the world might consider for sort of similar but also different reasons. These are Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Dubai. And so today I'm going to contrast a little bit for you Kuala Lumpur and Dubai. I have talked about this in the past, but today I'm going to talk specifically about what it is that made me choose Dubai over Kuala Lumpur. So let's dive in and cover it. Let me know your comments below. I'm looking forward to hearing them. And before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for your support, very much appreciated. If you're new here, I'm Michael from Offshore Citizen. We are some of the foremost international tax experts in the world. We specialize in helping people to relocate to other countries, set up companies in other countries, do international banking, international investing, all these sorts of things, both in the kind of figuring out the best strategy for you as well as implementing it side. So if those are things that are at all interesting to you, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send a message through offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so let's just kind of briefly recap a little bit of an overview of Kuala Lumpur and Dubai. So what's the appeal of Kuala Lumpur? So first of all, I think the weather is, assuming you don't hate humidity, because it is quite humid. Assuming you don't hate humidity, I think the weather is quite excellent. I mean, it's just all the time, like, I don't know, 25 to 32 or something all year round. So never gets particularly cold, never gets super, super hot. You could be there all year round, no issue. Obviously, there's periods where it's more rainy, but heat-wise, you're pretty excellent. It's very green, it's very lush, it's quite safe. If you're in kind of certain areas like the city center, kind of KLCC area, it's more like Singapore than, say, Bangkok, which is great. Beautiful buildings, lots going on, etc. I really like the people. I find, English is, basically a first language in Malaysia, so that's really excellent. On top of that, it is outrageously good value. In my opinion, I've said this numerous times before, KL has the best quality of life per dollar spent anywhere in the world. Really, really good. Residencies are a little kind of tricky. There's a couple different options. You can get a level 1 director's visa, pretty common that we would do that for people. Sometimes MM2H, there's this PVIP program now. I'll do a video on it at some point in the future. There's another SMM2H, and there's a few other programs. But bottom line is, I would say that it's not the best in terms of their residency programs. It's one of the things that I think has worked against Malaysia. On the flip side of it, you have UAE, and in particular Dubai. So Dubai is really tough to compete with in the world. It's sort of the new Monaco is how I describe it to people in some regards. You might describe it a little bit like Las Vegas in the Middle East with a beach. Very kind of modern, super high conveniences. You might say it has kind of a bias toward luxury. Certainly there are areas that are more luxurious than others, but definitely a lot of that. And the weather is, I would say, during the winter, extremely excellent. During the summer, definitely overly hot. Although to be fair, I'll do a video on this as well, it's not so intolerable as people might think, mainly because you're inside where it's air conditioned most of the time. I happened to be in Dubai for whatever it was, most of August this year, and I was pretty much fine. I would basically just go out to swim every day or two, and that was mainly what I would do in terms of going out. Otherwise, I was going to places that were air-conditioned, going out for dinner with friends, going to malls or something like that. And so the disadvantage, certainly you can't go walking so much, but then again, I'm from Canada and you don't really probably want to do that during the winter anyway. So, it's sort of a flip side in that regard. So this comes to okay, what are you comparing? And certainly one of the biggest parts of the appeal of UAE has been just plain zero tax, right? So it is very much the Monaco in that regard. Now, yeah, they've introduced corporate tax now, and that kind of complicates things a little bit, and that's a whole other conversation. But zero tax, personally, still very clean, very easy, very simple, very straightforward. In someplace like Malaysia, you can get certain types of income tax-free, and there's certain ways to optimize other types of income. So realistically, for a lot of people, if they're running a business, et cetera, they can, say, run something through Labuan or whatever, they can structure it. And often they can end up with sort of a 5%-ish blended tax rate. It's kind of got some complications to it, but that's a whole other conversation. So anyway, let's just say about 5%. So what you can immediately start saying is you can maybe say, okay, well, UAE is much more expensive than Malaysia is, for sure, no question about this. I would guesstimate that for a similar quality of life, could be 3x more expensive. Let's just kind of loosely put some ballpark numbers on it. That was kind of how I priced it out back in the day. I used to spend quite a lot of time in Malaysia pre-COVID. Really like Kuala Lumpur, really think that's fantastic. Was not a big fan of the government there. How they responded during COVID, I thought was really poor. And that's one of the things that kind of steers me away from that part of the world. Things were locked down quite a bit. I would call friends all the time, every few months, say, hey, are the pools open yet? They're like, no, okay, we're not coming. By contrast, UAE handled it very well. So just in general, I think the quality of the government in UAE tends to be much better than the quality of the government in Malaysia. The government has not got a lot of I don't give them a lot of confidence in Malaysia. But so the question becomes like, okay, well, why one versus the other? What would cause you to lean in one direction or the other? Well, certainly the more money you make, the more UAE makes sense, because the less your cost of living matters and the more the incremental value of the tax matters. So just from a pure cost standpoint, if you're into the 7 figures a year in income, then the tax savings in UAE frequently will outweigh the cost of living savings in Malaysia. So hence, if you're in a situation where you're like, okay, well, I'm not making as much money. Like if you were making $5,000 a month in UAE, I would say it's not that practical. Realistically, the cost of living is pretty high. You don't really benefit so much, say, on the tax savings side. You don't get a lot of the social benefits that you would get in some place like Canada or Australia or New Zealand or various parts of the EU, et cetera. And so it's questionable what the impetus would be to relocate in that situation. On the other hand, you could have a great time in Malaysia living a pretty great quality of life for relatively little. And so, somebody might find that kind of based on where they're at and their goals, that could be useful. Also, there's time zone considerations. For myself, I find the time zones in Malaysia to be a fair bit worse. I don't find Dubai to be ideal. I deal with people from Australia to, the west coast of the US. And so this kind of means kind of juggling people's schedules and interacting, et cetera. You sort of want a middle of the road time zone. Europe tends to be fairly good, especially Eastern Europe in that regard, for me personally, but it really depends on who you're working with, right? Certainly when I'm in Asia, when I'm in Thailand and Malaysia and Bali, places like that, I find it's pretty much the opposite of the North American time. And so that poses a bunch of challenges. It's not ideal for me. But that being said, maybe you're working with people in Australia and it's fantastic. So you kind of have to tailor to your specific situation. The thing that for me really tilts it is really kind of the idea of, are you in a mode where you're building or not? And I think for somebody who is building, generally speaking, I don't think that Malaysia is a terrible place. You have a reasonable local talent pool and the costs of that talent pool are pretty decent, et cetera. But there's just not people coming to build in Malaysia the same way they're coming to build in UAE. So UAE is an increasingly amazing hub for connecting with people. And connecting with those people has a pretty high output in terms of building towards some goals. Now, they have a lot of work to do in terms of making it an attractive place to actually source staff, et cetera. I've only ever had one employee who was living in UAE. All of my other employees have always lived in other parts of the world. And I suspect that will continue for some period of time just because it doesn't really make that much sense for them to come. But in terms of networking with other founders, with investors, with people you're going to do deals with, et cetera, it is highly, highly attractive to be in UAE. And so for me, just at the stage that I'm at, kind of the goals that I have, et cetera, this is what I would call a factor of disproportionate influence. It's just so, it overwhelms a lot of other things. And I sort of think, well, where else would you go? You could be in London, you could be in New York, you could be in, those would be two major ones. Okay, maybe Singapore. But you start to get trade-offs with a lot of those places. And so what Dubai offers is really, really unique. It's really an extraordinary quality of life for people who, it fits their values. And then on top of that, you have what is a really fantastic growing environment where I think there's a lot of opportunities that you can pick up, lots of people you can connect with. And that has a really huge benefit. While at the same time, hey, you don't pay tax. So let me know your thoughts. Put them in the comments below. I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.